Good morning, everyone. I'll call the Committee of the Whole work session supporting the community through quality public service to order this day on Tuesday, January 20th at 10:45. Good morning, everyone. I have our Administrator Treble online, so she's joining us. Good morning, Administrator.
Good morning.
Thanks for joining us. So on our agenda here, we have the minutes from our previous work session on November 18th. We also have minutes from the standing committees, and this is information only. So we would look at what happened at the Airport Advisory Commission, the Budget and Facilities Advisory Committee, and the Highway Advisory Committee, and these are all from November and December. So our agenda today is a good informational and quality training that we're having from the HR, and Allison will provide information. We've already had a couple handouts, so welcome. Thank you for coming and bringing us up to date.
Thank you for having me. All right. Well, I know I'm the only one on the agenda today, but I will still try to keep it shorter and brief. I can go down a big tunnel with this stuff if possible. So what I'd like to do today is provide you kind of a high-level overview of what myself at the HR department is doing with a review of our county policies, because that has been a topic of discussion for several years, even prior to me stepping into this role. And then after that, I want to touch base on kind of a training plan, a training focus that we're also putting together as well, and that is part of our strategic plan. We've identified training as a gap in something that we're offering and not offering, I should say. So there's some work that's being done behind the scenes for that as well. But first, let's dive into policies. So I handed out, the first handout, the kind of more colorful one that I handed out to you is a list of our current county policies, or at least the ones that I could identify and find that we have. And then there's some other information on here. So let me talk to you about kind of how this list was derived and how it was created. So when I started the job, the HR director role, and even prior to my other roles within the county, there's always been kind of a discussion point about a review of our county policies, that many of our county policies have not been reviewed in quite a while. A lot of our policies are very vague, don't encompass things that have maybe shifted or become practice in our organization, or even policies that don't exist. And how do we enforce something that's important to the organization that maybe sets employee behavior expectations, for example, but is not actually written down? So through the years, the fact that we are behind on these policies in those respects has become a bit of an issue, and again, problemsome. So one of the big tasks when I came into this role is, well, how do we tackle policies? We need to really have a strong foundation, a base foundation of what our policies, procedures, our expectations are with how our organization functions, how our employees function. And then that will have a cascading effect of, staff that know the expectations. We can have a really strong culture. There's a cascading effect, but you have to have those base foundations first. And so to do that, was like, how do we tackle the policy piece first? And then that was a strong viewpoint with Kristen coming in as administrator too, and then also identified in the strategic plan that we did with former administrator Yorkie was that we really need to tackle, it is time, we need to update these policies. So what I did is I took apart the current Cook County Employee Handbook, or I should say former Employee Handbook, because there's been changes there, which I can reference here later. So I just pulled this from my onboarding binder. So this is what employees have typically seen is our Employee Handbook. Now, every section of this handbook, so starting with our introduction, our equal employment opportunity policy, at-will employment, the types of appointments, each of those sections are technically our policies, right? They're just not separated into their own document. It's just one long-running document. So most of our policies, our personnel-related policies, are incorporated into the former employee handbook. And then there's other ones that are more comprehensive that are separate documents. So we have a more comprehensive like FMLA policy, our travel policy, remote work. So those all also are policies in addition to these ones. So what I did to start with is we had to know, well, what policies do we have? Potentially, when were they last reviewed, but even the date's not important if we're gonna go through all of them. Who does it impact? Which department or which individual is the so-called owner of the policy? Just because it says policy doesn't mean it's HR, right? I don't do MIS policies, that's Rowan's department. So there was some information to kind of compile and inventory the policies that we have to know where we actually need to start. In addition to inventorying the policies that we currently have, that I'm able to find at least that impact the entire organization. So again, things that require staff to follow something or set expectations, those are things that I'm hoping to inventory and have on this list. So in addition to that, I wanted to use resources that are available to us to identify policies. If we don't have them, what are policies that we should look at having as well, we should be adding. So on this list, the very top of the list, and my list looks a little different than the one you have, and I'll explain why. So the beginning of the list, and I think I counted, there's like almost 60 policies broken out of here, and then individual policies that were separate from the handbook. So I've inventoried those, and then at the very end, there is a separate column. It's kind of separated. There's a little separation in that first column, and then it's policies, or looking to add. So these were examples of policies that maybe have been identified in the organization, that we don't have, that we'd like to have, or maybe other resources. And I can mention the resources that I've been using with me moving into the HR director role. I have access to HR specific training it's a compilation, a collaboration with DDA, Human Resources. So we have used DDA for their services in the past for various things. DDA collaborates with AMC to provide basically like HR Director 101 kind of training like they do for administrators and commissioners. And that allows me access to policies, policy templates, performance evaluation models, things like that. So I use that resource, and then the state, MMB website is really good as well. The state has a very comprehensive list of policies, and they're laid out very well. And so between those two resources, I've been able to compare what our policies are, what we have for policies, not necessarily the content of the policies, but basically like the titles of our policies, comparing to these other resources to really get a strong overview, a comprehensive view of, sorry, my computer, it's going to sleep, the policies that we have versus where are our gaps. And so this is the list that I've handed out to you of those policies that we have that we want to review and the ones that we are looking to add. That's the first column. So then I said, after I inventoried the policies, it's kind of collecting more information. Again, date doesn't necessarily matter because we're going to review all of them, but I did initially, if the dates were known of when the policy was last approved or revised, I included that. You don't see that. It's on there's some information I've retained on my spreadsheet that I've hidden on yours. But some of these policies, they haven't been reviewed in decades, so it's time. I sure know I've changed over a couple of decades, so your policies have too. So then what I have provided to you, so outside of me cataloging and inventorying the policies, is the colorful columns that you have on your sheets is, again, this is a really kind of draft-based spreadsheet that I'm hoping to, as I have time, that I can get back to and really kind of enhance it and add more information, more context as we work through the policy reviews. But there's a column, most of it is like a salmon-y pink color. So this is the status of the policies as we start to dive into them. Most of them are the salmon pink because that's the color I've associated with not started. There's also status for in review, in review, in draft. So in draft would be the next step up. Like we started to look at it, I've started to make revisions. In review means I have a draft and I've started to share it with the committees and the individuals involved in the review process. And then some of them are actually now marked approved, like we've actually finished the review process and it's gone to the board and it's been approved. So I wanted to start indicating where we're at in the status of those policies as we start to go through the list and review them. And then another important thing is, well, how do we distinguish which policies are so-called more important than the others, or the priority level, I should say, in the order that we review them? I mean, I think we could say everything is high priority, but I can't possibly review 60 policies all at once. So how we've determined priority at this point is kind of situationally based as to what has come up. In my work, most of the stuff that I do on a day-to-day basis is not stuff that I planned to work on. It is literally the stuff that just comes up very unexpectedly. And I think a lot of that, at least recently, has really driven the policies that have, has identified the policies that have really kind of floated up to the top. To be addressed. So I've indicated priority as low, medium, or high. Again, the ones that are high are either ones that have been identified for a while and we've been working on, and we just need to finish the review process and get them approved. Like we just did the bereavement policy last week. That is one that was kind of in this pending review status even before I moved into this position, and it's like, people are asking about it, we need to just be done with it, it's in a good spot, let's get it done. And then other ones, again, are kind of, again, situationally driven based on what's occurring in the organization. So like perhaps discipline, because there's some indications that that may not be overly comprehensive and have the context that we're looking for. Maybe the grievance process. We're working right now on earned sick and safe time and FMLA and the personnel committee, because those also pair with Minnesota paid leave. So it's important that drove the priority for those ones, because they're driven by other policies that have been needed, like the state and federal mandate changes. We've got remote work. Teleworking is a huge one too, that has been identified as one that needs to be clarified and updated. One right now too that is kind of driven to the top based on situations of the workplace is like workplace violence, code of conduct, things like that. So there are a few on this list that as of right now have risen to the top to be high priority, and whether I've started drafting or revising them, those are indicated then by the status, or if they've not started, but they will eventually be started. So that is the framework. Again, it's still a work in progress because there's a lot involved with our policies, collecting them, identifying them, using the resources to update them. What do we want to see as an organization? And then along with just kind of the process that we have to go through in the whole cycle of reviewing and bringing these to you for approval, which I just want to mention as well, is what we tend to do is with the policies that have been identified as high priority. So those are the ones that we really want to start off and hit right now. I will work with Kristen, or I will look at our resources and provide a draft of the revised policy. And then we tend to bring them to the personnel committee. So this afternoon we have our personnel committee meeting, and there's going to be a couple on there. We've got out-of-class appointments, which is a high priority one. We've identified that based on situations occurring in the workplace. We're going to talk about workplace violence. So that is a big first step for our policy review for revisions and updates. And then depending on the policy too, we want to make sure that we have feedback and input from Matt. So the department heads, and then also it's important that we involve and communicate and collaborate with our union stewards as well. Because depending on the policy and the expectations or potential compensation or benefits that are provided by it, we have to involve them as well, because those things are also covered by the collective bargaining agreement. So there's kind of a lot in process, a lot that goes into this kind of circle of life with our policy reviews. But this is going to provide, again, the framework to really tackle all of our policies, and then at some point we'll get to a place where then we can determine kind of an ongoing review schedule. But we can't do that until we've had a chance to look at all of the policies. My goal, based on what I've been able to accomplish thus far, averages maybe around 2 policies a month that I can get drafts, and then they start going into kind of that committee, MAT team, LMC review process. And then it's a little longer because they also have to go to the county attorney for review and make sure that we have the legalities covered in those policies before they ultimately come to you.
We have 60 policies.
I think that's what I
Excuse me, we have about
counted.
60 policies, is
That's
that
what
you
I
said?
counted. Well, I mean, that's a really rough figure. So based on the Excel spreadsheet that I passed out to you, there's right around 60 policies that I've been able to inventory and identify, plus looking to add policies, so policies that we don't currently have and that we should be looking at adding. There's probably another couple dozen.
So at 2 a month, this is job security for the next 2.5 years.
Well, I think I have job security no matter what because of all
No.
the other situations
But
that come up.
this process will
It's-
take 2.5
it's gonna take a
years,
while.
but,
This is not going to be a quick process.
so what's the suggested, or what would be a good time to review a policy? Every 2 years, every 3 years, every 5 years?
I would say, just from my experience in the past, that first we need to get through all our policies.
Correct.
And then establishing a number of years, maybe it's 3 years, 5 years, so that we don't get behind.
And that was my question. So you'll have like, maybe, let's be real, 3 months, and then we start reviewing policies, which should be a quicker
Yep.
process
Yep,
than,
because they'll be more
Correct.
updated.
Right.
And maybe other policies will be driven with changes at the state level. Like, we didn't anticipate, necessarily FMLA, ESST, paid time, our county paid time off, which we changed, but that was all driven because of paid family medical leave. So there could be some of that. And maybe Kristen will add in here too. So when her and I were talking about the policy review process, because it's going to be daunting, it's going to take a while. This is not the only work that I have, right? So it's fitting it in with every other thing. But I think she talked to a similar county, and Kristen, I might have you do this, but it took them about 8 years to actually get through all of their policies. So yeah, it's not a quick process, especially if we want to be thorough and very thoughtful. What goes
well,
into the policy?
why strive for mediocrity? Do it right, so.
Yep.
And if I can jump in quickly and just add to that, Allison is correct that in the conversation I had with another county administrator that went through a similar process, it took approximately 8 years to review all of their policies. And so I'm hoping that we can accomplish this in a shorter time frame than that. However, it is going to take us some time, and we want to make sure that we're giving each policy the attention that they require to ensure that it has all the information necessary before we move forward. The other piece I wanted to mention is regarding the review cycle. Once we are done with all of the policies, and as we go through them, like Allison has talked about, she's looking at all of them from a high, medium, and low priority in terms of how we immediately address them, but we need to do the same thing regarding the future review. So some policies we may need to review on an annual basis and have employees actually sign off and review and provide confirmation that they have reviewed it and agree to the contents of the policy. And some policies, like Commissioner Sullivan said, we might be able to review every 3 to 5 years. So we anticipate doing that work as a portion of this review process, determining what cycle each one of the policies should be on.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There are policies that, as you referenced, family, medical leave, whatever, that annually, and you'll get postings that'll come out, it can be workplace, whatever, things that are driven by the state or the federal, so it's a regulatory thing. And so policies need to be updated according to whatever's happening from the, or, regulatory entity. So that's something that drives priority, simply to be in compliance because of change. The other thing I would say, what you've done in looking at things, if you look at what's part of policy manuals elsewhere, you can look at and see how we compare, and then you add those things in there so that we're trying to be as broad-based as we can relative to policy. And our attorney can speak to this, but I think that anything that is not drafted in policy that has been practiced is assumed to be policy. And so it's important that we have our policies that have been reviewed by the entities that we think are important to contribute to that. I would say from the standpoint of drafting that if you look at templates that are out there that exist, that those templates can be taken, and I would encourage that the templates would be current based upon interpretation and challenge in the rule of law. So that if you know that a policy's been in place that's ever been challenged and whatever precedent has been stated based upon interpretation, that we would know that would be a good template at least to start from, because it's been tried and it's true. And so part of facilitating moving forward, we don't have to start from scratch. We can take a template that we think is good, and then with the MAP team and going through the different people that input, refine those policies. As to priority, it sounds like lived experience is defining the priorities, so it's not subjective relative to I'll set a priority and I just know what my experience is, and therefore my priorities are based upon what that is. The other thing would be to the issue of whatever state and federal is doing that bumps that into a priority.
Yep.
But I think, not to simplify it, but I think to have some framework in which we move forward that helps us to be able to accomplish this in a timely basis, that looking at templates and then starting at that point would be helpful.
And I do that, yes, absolutely. Why recreate the wheel if it's already out there, right? And so those resources that I mentioned, the DDA AMC collaboration that has the HR resources, and then the Minnesota MMB website, those are kind of my two go-to sites that provide base templates. And then outside of that too, I can access other county policies, and then as an HR director group, through our macrame state association, I have access to, they use Basecamp. And so there's a lot of shared files on that. So I do utilize that, and that definitely helps speed up the process, because there's a lot more already in these policy templates that I can access that I would know or remember to include. And so that does very much help. And then I think about, with my years here at the county, I know there's a ton it's practice, not written in policy. And so I have come from that perspective too, as I'm reviewing policy, is like, well, what do we do that's not written down? And so I've tried to incorporate those things into the policies that I have reviewed thus far. And I will just say paid time off is one example, that we have a cap of 520 hours in an employee's paid leave bank, that is the max. People can exceed that during the year, but at year end, you lose anything that's over 520. 520 is the max that rolls over into January 1st. That's not stated in policy, that's just practice. It may be written elsewhere, but it's not written in policy. Or length of service. So based on your consecutive years of service, you increase 5, 10, 15 years, you get an increase in your paid leave accrual, your paid time off accrual. It's not written anywhere that it's consecutive years of service. So, sorry, Jean, to use you. But we have employees like County Attorney Peterson that have worked for the organization and maybe left and then came back, but that's a break in service. So basically their years of service restart with their newer employment. We don't add their previous years to the current years. So it's those practices that were really hard to define and explain to staff when it's not written down anywhere. So I'm trying to incorporate, again, those practices now into the policies going forward, so it's
And I think
clear.
that the process for review, when you look at it, a template, that template is something that has been tested, because I'm assuming when it goes, to you as an attorney, you're looking to make sure, are the words we're using and everything else something that'll stand up and support, what the intent is. And so if we have something that we've sort of applied that scrutiny because it is current and it seems to be more precedent and upheld, it'll make your job easier than having to start, from scratch necessarily.
Attorneys love templates. I think very few of us have original thoughts
Yeah.
these days. But the danger in using them, and I think what is tedious and time consuming is making sure, because we have so many policies already and because they are piecemeal and kind of there's overlap between some of the policies, there's holes in some of the
Yeah.
policies, as Allison stated, and so when we do have a template, which is a great starting point, we have to make sure that it is consistent with the policies that are already in place, and that is, to me, that's the time-consuming part, and then also making sure that it's something that will be enforceable.
I was looking at the continuum here, so approved is done. Then the next step, which is first, the draft or the review?
So it'd be not started, in draft, in review, approved.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yes.
One thing I wanted to, and sorry if I missed it, but just wanted to mention was our policies and practice defined in our bargaining union agreements. So for example, the PTO cap that
Yes.
is specifically written into bargaining union agreements, but
Believe
it's
so.
not in the
In our county policy.
manual, so I don't know where it's most appropriate, but just there have been in the past discrepancies between
Yep. Yep.
what the bargaining unit agreement, the contract has, and the handbook, and so just, making sure. all of
Very
that
aware
is-
of
yeah,
the
yeah.
discrepancies, yes. And that is something that myself and Kristen,
Mhm.
going into because our contracts end at the end of this year. So with the intentions of going into bargaining, either spring, summer, at some point this year, that will be one of the things that we'd like to tackle. Historically, HR has not been involved. I know previously James did not include me in the bargaining process. And I think there's a little bit of a downside to that because there are a lot of discrepancies, and when something is proposed, to have HR knowledge there to say, well, that won't work. It's important. It's important that HR is there to know, will it work with the systems that we have? Will it work with the other policies that we have? If we do that, what else will it impact? So that's something that is on our mind as we prepare to go into this bargaining session.
Yeah, sorry. I was just gonna say that was very intentional, keeping HR out of it, because we want HR to be the neutral, trusted,
Yep.
place to go.
Yep.
But everything is,
Yeah.
I agree with, we need the expertise, and so the intention is to have, the teams meet together,
Mhm.
and then the team go back to the broader team and ask, whether
Mhm.
it's, the sheriff's office with that contract, or just,
Mhm.
personnel issues, go to HR,
Mm-hmm.
so at least the intention then was to do it that way, and I don't know what best practice is, but certainly.
Most other counties involve HR, because that's an important part, again, of having the entire context of the organization and how those different bargained pieces will impact other policies, other practices, or again, even the capabilities of our systems. We have to keep that in mind as well. So that is something that Kristen, and it sounds like Kristen was going to speak up here, that as I have asked my counterparts and Kristen has reached out to other county administrators, is that it's very rare for HR to not be involved.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah,
just at the
Yes,
table
yes.
even? Or like?
correct.
Wow.
Yep, yeah. And it's-
That's correct. If I can jump in real quickly and just add that in my past experience bargaining, I always had HR at the table, and so this was new to me coming to Cook County, not having our HR director involved in the process, and so I did reach out to several county administrators to seek their advice and input, as well as AMC, and it appears that the best practice is to have HR as part of that process. And to your point about them being kind of a neutral, trusted party for staff as we move forward, I think that still can happen. I think the negotiations is just specific to the contract, and if employees have concerns about the workspace, their supervisor, the environment, anything like that, they still can raise those issues with HR, which is very separate from negotiations. So my hope is that we can still continue to accomplish both.
Yeah.
Thank you. Commissioner Gandy?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would use it correct or incorrect. I would use a comparison in when we have our board meetings that our county attorney is there. Our county attorney is there to inform from the legal perspective. And so HR being there to inform from the legal perspective, but not as a voting, influencing, other than informing position, I think would be what would best practices would identify. And there's multiple components in the bargaining that determine outcomes, and one of them is going to be from the human resource, the other is going to be from the legal. I know that going into bargaining agreements with unions, we had 3 objectives, and our 3 objectives, one is to cultivate a culture of trust, build trust with employees. The other was to try to create uniform as much as we can, given the diversity that exists within departments, unions, create uniform so that one bargaining group was how come they and we don't, kind of thing.
Yep.
And the third was fiscal responsibility on behalf of taxpayers. And so I would say that that covering all those bases from a legal standpoint, from understanding uniform and application of policy, and making sure that we're consistent in what we say in contracts as well as in policy, it's good to have those eyes that are specific on those areas. But it is not from an influential position, it is from an informative position.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else you want to add on this information? Any other questions?
No,
about this?
I mean, I don't think I have any other information to provide at this time, except this is a work in progress, and I'll just keep revamping it, especially if there's other policies that we identify. I mean, some of these policies are not going to be owned by HR, again, because they're data practices, like maybe that will be an attorney policy, or there's like acceptable use for internet and email, so that's an MIS policy. But it will at least help, again, drive our path forward, and really utilizing the Personnel Committee to bring the drafts forward and really start the process after I have a draft. And yeah, we'll just continue to work through it. I'll continue to update this, add more information, take it away as we move forward.
Small bites.
Small bites, yes. And then I was just going to add too, so, I showed you the employee handbook, which one of the reasons why kind of having a different template for this was important is because this was a really static document and is very hard to update when we're reviewing sections of it, because all of the policies listed in here are just consecutive. It's one after another, and so I think that's why the handbook was last updated in 2018. I mean, it's significantly out of date, hence the policy reviews. So what I had done, and I think you all received the emails when they're sent out to county employees, is one of the parts that we had to also look at, in addition to the policy review process, is well, how do we review policies and then incorporate them into this really static old document? So that is why there was a revamp of the former employee handbook, which I'm now going to call the personnel policy manual. And each of these kind of individual policies in here have been taken out separately and put in their own document. And so now with each section or each policy from the handbook separated out from the whole document, now it's a compilation of different files. So now when I go in and update policies, I can literally just be like, take that old file out, put in the new one, without it having to impact, like, how do I update the whole document? Because then another question was, well, when we did want to update this, did we have to bring the entire thing to the commissioners when we updated one little section, right? So this now allows us to move forward, updating the policies and incorporating them into a personnel policy manual much more efficiently than what we were available to do before. And then also the internal SharePoint page has been updated, so it's not just this whole document. Everything is broken down by their files into a separate file folder corresponding to the type of policy that it's in. So, yeah, lots of changes, and I'm trying to communicate that to employees, but there'll be continued communication and probably some trainings, which will be a segue into our next topic. But yeah, it'll be a learning process for all of us, but I think we're on a good path forward.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Campbell.
Yeah, I think that the compartmentalizing based upon the policy is user-friendly.
Oh, absolutely, yeah,
And
yeah.
it just has a lot of advantages, so if I want to find something out, I don't want to search for it, I want to be able to go to that page.
Right to that document.
And even if
Yep.
it's a very short policy from the narrative, it's got its separate section. The other thing, if you wanted to add additional work for yourself, you could
Optional.
reference the last change, the last time changed, and any narrative that informed why the change moving forward. That way, when you look at it, you say, you don't say,
I don't know
I
what
don't know,
changed.
it just got changed.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
what informed the change, so that that reference were there,
Right.
you can speak to it and people can understand.
And that could be like a section at the very end of the policy that is like when you go to statutes, and it's like you
It's
have
like
the old
statutes,
statutes,
that's the
yeah,
point,
like we
yeah.
can have
It's
some
just like
reference in there.
statutes. But if you
Yep.
want to know, well, why did they change that?
Mhm.
Then you can go and you understand, and I think that's beneficial, but it certainly is additional work.
In the short run. But maybe in
Right.
the long run, it's gonna be a.
Well,
Yeah,
you know
so it'll
it
be
is, it is,
very
and
helpful.
do it while you know it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Because you, going back and trying to reestablish is
Mhm.
problematic.
Mhm.
But the other question I was gonna ask is that, if you were to say, ask the question either amongst your peers or online or whatever, what policies are the most problematic? You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
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 Yeah, understanding.
Yeah.
Which ones are the most challenging, the most,
All of
that
them.
are referenced to whatever, that helps to inform the priority and to try to get it right too, because it's subjective interpretation. The more that we don't make it subjective, but it's defined clearly, the better it is.
Right. Yeah.
Commissioner Sullivan, did you have a comment?
I just wanted to thank you for going in and separating these out so they're easy to revise and put into the personnel handbook. It's a lot like the commissioner handbook. It was all one document to try to get that into pieces that can change easily as statute change, as practices change. It's really important to do. So I just applaud you for taking on that most challenging task.
It'll be, as we say, user-friendly.
Yes, yeah.
And I would like to add now, you can't leave. We need to have someone in place as backup who is like we want with Brady and everybody else, because your institutional knowledge that you are gaining on this, we need to have somebody on site that can pick up the ball when you decide the lottery winnings are allowing you to move to warmer climes or something.
Wish I had that luck, yes, yes. I'd probably, as my husband says, I'd probably still work because I like it. Yeah, yeah. Thank you. Well, then that leads us into the other important topic that I wanted to provide a high-level update on is training. Or I should almost say, what, training? Because I feel like that's something that we have been striving to progress and be better at as an organization. And this was also identified in the strategic plan of really a gap in the services that we provide our staff for continued growth and improvement, especially as people transition between jobs internally, maybe moving from a non-supervisory position to a supervisory position. We have a lot of new supervisors or people moving into a department head position. So it's one thing to understand their context area in which they work, but what are the other resources and opportunities that we can provide? Kristen had initially started this conversation and sent out a staff survey about like if we provided, say, monthly trainings, like if you think like a, what do they call it? Like the Brown lunch and learns or kind of thing like that. But maybe not over lunch because people should be able to leave for lunch. But like if we offered, little training snippets in the morning, what would be the topics that people would like to see? So Kristen, myself, and Mike Crusoe, our HR generalist, we met with Kristen and we kind of talked about what were the topics of feedback from that survey, along with what are just other identified topics of trainings that we have heard of, that other staff have identified, that we as HR know we'd like to provide people, especially because we really spearhead that onboarding process. And so Mike has taken a lead on drafting, again, rough draft. All these are going to be works in progress. They're not static, one time and done type of documents. But that's the other handout I handed you. So Mike has started compiling a list of the training topics. Again, whether these are kind of on a monthly rotating basis, depending on what we feel staff need to be re-educated on, whether it's an HR topic, an MIS topic, or more like maybe occasional offerings that are a lot larger in nature. And I can talk about one of those trainings here that we're offering coming up. So so Mike has just compiled a list of trainings. Some trainings we feel should be done annually that have not been done annually. And so right off the bat, like for example, sexual harassment, like we should do an annual training on that. CPR, first aid, AED training, that is something that just recently, because we usually as a benefits and wellness committee, we used to historically try to bring in a trainer every 2 years. Certifications last 2 years, so we were trying to keep up on a every other year schedule to keep people's certifications active. And we're like, Cook County Higher Ed is literally a block. Why don't we send them there? We'll pay for it, right? So it's identifying those types of things that we can offer to all staff, and then also incorporate into our onboarding. Like, hey, new hires, if you'd like, if there's training, like sign up, we'll pay for it. Trainings about our different benefits. A lot of our benefit trainings, not even trainings, like information refreshers, that comes during open enrollment. So we're first trying to plot
This call will be recorded.
Oh, okay. Something's recorded. So what we're trying to do is plot
This
down the
call is
different...
no longer being recorded.
Psych.
Right, okay. My voice triggering something like Alexa? I don't know. So we're trying to plot down the different trainings that we'd like to see, regardless of the frequency or not even necessarily identifying the cost. Is it remote? Is it in person? We're just trying to compile these different ideas, right? And so this is so far what we have compiled. Maybe we need to refresh people on the EAP, so I try to send out emails, but like, what about in-person reminders? Hey, let's talk about our travel policy. How do you fill out that reimbursement voucher, right? one of the monthly topics for a change in an organization that maybe is more pertinent to having a training sooner rather than later is like Rowan and MIS. We are going through the .gov changes, so maybe bringing a topic like that in more on as like a monthly presentation. We're working on a workplace violence policy or updating ours. No, we actually don't have a workplace violence policy. This is a brand new policy. So what kind of training can we pair with that? So again, we'll just use this as we add to it and kind of flush out the details of how would we like to offer this, what frequency. Is it remote? Do we do like a live session in here through the computer? Do we bring in a live person? So outside of these, one of the other things that I wanted to mention that kind of internally, that outside of us drafting a training plan and a schedule, is departments themselves can take initiative and do trainings. And that doesn't even necessarily have to be context related to their departments. But one example, I wanted to give a shout out to the highway department. They are really taking hold and kind of leading the way with some of this stuff. So they are utilizing the supervisors. Robbie and the supervisors are doing, I think it's about quarterly. They're identifying a training to do through the Achieve Center for Leadership. And occasionally I get emails from these and I try to share them, but this will I think I added this on this list of a resource for trainings, that they identify a training, all of the supervisors take it, and it's just like a live on-demand training, and then they collectively meet. So this last week on Tuesday, I joined them and they debriefed about the training and what did they learn. This was on like leadership styles. So the last training that they did, are you a coach? Are you a cheerleader? Are you an authoritarian? So they talk about what their, say, personality was like with the leadership in this one, and then they talk about like, well, what should I improve on? What are the methods that I can bring that I learned from this training into my work as a supervisor? And I think that's great, and I really like to see something like that, whether we do it on a county-wide basis, if we can offer trainings like that, or again, even just departments really taking their own lead and doing that internally. I think that's great. One of the trainings that Kristen and I do want to bring awareness of, and we've talked about it at different meetings, we've hinted at it, that it's coming, but it is coming, we have dates. So Kristen and I went to a joint county administrator and county HR conference this fall, and there was a presenter, his name is John Lockhorst, and he presented on mission critical leadership. So it's how do you as a leader lead in all directions? How do you lead the people below you, so people you supervise? How do you lead horizontally, so people that you co-lead with? And how do you lead up? And it was a fabulous presentation. And so we have been working with him, meeting with him, and we have identified a date that we would like to bring him here. We are looking at it'll be a full day training, but the first half of the day will be with our MAP and supervisor teams. And then the second half in the afternoon, I think Kristen has already hinted at this, will be for commissioners to work with him. And outside of him bringing his mission critical leadership presentation, we can also customize the training to the organization and what we want to see. So that is something that we're really excited about, and I certainly don't recall in my time here when we've really had a strong leadership presentation. So this will be hopefully the first of many, especially now that we have budgeted funds for training. For all employees, supervisors, leaders in the organization. So we're really excited to bring him in. So I just say too, because Kristen wanted me to say it. So I just sent out a calendar hold for Matt and supervisors. So John will be here, I think it's Friday, February 27th. So he'll be here in the morning for Matt and supervisors. And then we're going to plan on the afternoon. I'm thinking 1 to 5, time to be determined, that he will meet with you commissioners for that specific training.
What's the date again?
February 27th.
That was our.
But more
We have that.
information
Okay.
more information to come on that.
Okay,
But
so I haven't.
but we've solidified a date, and we're gonna meet with him to kind of suss out more details of the training and the structure for that.
Commissioner Mills?
This is all great, thank you. One thing that jumps out at me is just customer service training.
Yeah.
Yep, yep.
And that was mentioned in the staff survey
Mhm.
ideas that
Yep.
were given, so.
That was all.
Yes.
I'd like to jump in quick if that's all right, and first apologize. I'm not trying to create a second recording of this meeting. I'm not quite sure what happened there, but and then I wanted to thank Allison and Mike for their work on the policy reviews as well as this training. Like she mentioned, both items are part of the strategic plan, and in my opinion, both items are high priority for the organization. So I'm really excited to see that we're making some incredibly strong progress forward in both areas. So I just wanted to thank her for her work.
Ditto, ditto, and ditto.
Absolutely.
Commissioner Gamble?
Yeah, thank you. At the past, most recent AMC, the conference that we had, I attended a workshop, and I'm not sure if it was Dakota County or Wright County. The presenter was a training specialist for that county, and I did talk to her after the presentation, wanting to know if she was a part-time or full-time position. And I'm not suggesting that we hire somebody to do this, because I attended that workshop, and I attended another one that was a county that very resourceful in putting together their training program. And it was actually an institution that they initiated, and they had spent $175, but it was their resourcefulness addressing an issue. And coming out of the discussion with the first presentation with that training specialist, that she said, what we do, and it's not mandatory, she said, but we have all of these trainings that we do. So what they're doing is they're equipping and training staff, and they recognize the importance of it, and that is their sole responsibility. So her presentation was good because it was substantive on issues that contribute to good performance and practice. And I think she would be a great resource because this is something she does full time. I'm saying a great resource, not necessarily from a presentation standpoint, but from understanding an outline of things that get addressed and they have prioritized as being important. I think when I look at this list, some of it I'll refer to as medicinal, and others, like in the highlighted yellow here, I think those are things that are foundational. And I think a lot of the foundational, understanding why we do what we do and how to best do that is important. The medicinal is addressing an issue that is part of our policy, that to be sure we're understanding it, especially as supervisors, to be able to communicate so that throughout the organization there's clarity on these things. But equipping people with the skills that are the interpersonal, the customer service, all of those things, the integrity, those are huge. And if we want to change the culture, and in hiring Mike, my statement was that if it means that you are able to focus more on things that help us change culture, then I support that. So this is good, and certainly Kristen's experience and knowledge in this area will help to fuel it. So you've got to believe it in order to make it happen.
And just to comment on that too, what we noticed with the staff feedback from that survey is a lot of the things were HR related, which will come and will be addressed as we work through updating policies, and we provide kind of the informational training sessions on those, just processes, procedures tied to even the policy updates. And then in addition to that, yeah, because I think once we get that, that's a big hurdle of just people want to know internally what they're supposed to do. And then to build off of that and bring in like John Lockhorst, or identify customer service trainings, work with the higher ed, like what are their resources to not only learn the base foundations that we want people to feel comfortable with, but add those skills, customer service, dealing with conflict, how do you lead, like we've got Toastmasters that comes in, like eventually getting people to attend that as well. Yeah.
And what AMC, provides that might be available, or to NACO as well.
Yep.
And some of it is having facilitators internally that can take good information and present it, so.
Yep.
And we'd all travel around to different committees and boards and all that in the state, and so to your point about somebody who really kind of is outstanding, to be able to get some info and bring it back, it's really important.
Yeah, yeah.
And despite it being highlighted, I did not see the staff survey ideas. Thank you for pointing that out. Yeah.
We'll double highlight it next time, right, Allison?
Next time-
With some big arrows.
Next time, double highlight. That's what we're focusing.
We're just so used to seeing it on Google searches when it yellows everything. I retype it to eliminate it.
Anything else, Allison?
No. I mean, these are very big topics, and again, with just two of us right now in HR, there's a lot of other things that we're trying to tackle, and so just having these written down and knowing that we're progressing, and it will take a while, but we will get there.
No pressure.
No pressure.
We won't ask every other meeting. How you doing? What's on your list?
Yeah,
What
right.
you
A lot.
approved?
It's a long list.
We
yeah.
could have a little visual, like here's 60 and here, watch the little thermometer go up.
Thermometer, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that's actually kind of why I kind of color-coded things, because eventually I can create the charts to show kind of what our status is. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, anything else? Well, thank you so much for bringing us up to speed.
Yeah,
and-
you're very welcome.
And informing us, and the good work ahead, I appreciate it
Yeah,
too.
you're very welcome.
So there being nothing else on our agenda, we are adjourned.
There's an awful lot of policies. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day, everybody.
You too.